All right. Well, thank you for those of you who are on the call. You understand the significance of time and why we need to get started here. Plus, I have a flight that I need to catch here in a very short time. So we've been discussing the topic of how to thrive in difficult times. And during the last few sessions, we've covered different pieces of that journey. We talked about how to prioritize your mental health and a few other topics around that. But today we want to focus more around the question of how to make decisions. Decisions are critical during difficult times. Decisions are difficult during good times, but decision making in uncertain times is key because at which point, if things aren't hard, if things aren't tough, you can make decisions and the outcomes or the opportunity cost for that situation may not matter much because it did not hit you in a painful spot or it does not cost you anything that otherwise could have been a gain to you. So today we're going to be looking at 10 keys, 10 critical things that you must remember in order to be able to make decisions, good decisions in critical times, and good decisions in difficult times. Now, in challenging times, what you have to remember is that making confident decisions, keyword, confident, making confident decisions in challenging times is crucial as well as it is complex. So I'll give you a step-by-step guide on how to improve decision making, especially geared for times that are hard. The first thing that I want to tell you is that, and this is the first point to remember, is that you have to stay grounded and calm. That's the first thing. You must stay grounded and calm. Why? Because if you're not grounded, if you're not calm, what happens is you start making haphazard decisions. You're in a hurry, you're panicking, you're freaking out, you're not paying attention to the key elements and how that impacts your entire journey. So, in times of crisis, your emotions are going to be running high. In times of crisis, you have to center yourself to make big decisions. And why is this important? Simple techniques that you must remember. Very, very simple things. Just remember to breathe. Oftentimes we become so problem centric. We become so caught up in the problem or the issue or whatever it is that we're dealing with that we completely don't even pay attention. We don't even pay attention to ourselves. So you have to understand that basic grounding techniques like breathing, sometimes you just take some time away to just briefly meditate, or sometimes it's just a moment of self reflection can help you have clarity, will help you have better insights into what the situation is. It will reduce stress and avoid hasty choices. So, step number one in making decisions during difficult times is to ensure that you stay grounded and you remain calm at all times. Number two, assess the current situation clearly, like assess it, have a full understanding of what's going on. Don't be so caught up in the issue. So take a step back, evaluate what is really happening, ask yourself questions like what exactly are the challenges that I am facing? What are the most immediate concerns? Define what problems with clarity. Define each problem, define each challenge, define each opportunity with very clear picture. Have a clear picture of what exactly it is that you're facing so that you will know exactly what to do based on what it is that you're dealing with. So, number one, breathe, relax, calm down. The whole world will not end. And then number two, what are the parameters that affects that situation and how are you going to deal with it. So assess that current situation with clarity so that you know exactly what to do. Number three, identify priorities and break down goals. Identify your priorities and break down the goals, what you're trying to achieve. One thing you have to remember about uncertain times is that breaking down your decisions into small, manageable steps makes it easier to accomplish. Focus on what you might consider to be your short term goals. Prioritize them because those short time or those short term goals contribute to your long term goals. If you're trying to achieve something that is worth 10,000, focus on getting the first 1,000 and then the next and next and next. And it's only a matter of time that you accomplish your goal of 10,000. But thinking in terms of what is next will also help you bring the best things that you can do now, the best things that you can do today, rather than overwhelming yourself with the big decisions. What are the things that have immediate direct impact that has to be addressed right away? What are those issues? If there are things that can wait, push them aside and focus on the things that are more critical, that are more important, that need to be addressed right now. Number four, you need to gather information wisely. I didn't say gather information. We live in an information driven age. There's a lot of information out there, but you need to gather information with wisdom. Why is this critical? Make decisions based on facts, not on your feelings, on your assumptions, and not on half-baked truths. Seek reliable sources of information, particularly when dealing with things like your finances, security, healthcare. Those things are very tangible. They are black or white. There are no gray areas. Okay? Talk to knowledgeable individuals or consult trustworthy sources rather than reacting to rumors or fear-driven stories or join the mill train to start talking about T-Pain and all the kind of things that are happening. Get your facts and your figures straight. You know, it's interesting that when you're talking to certain people with regards to things like the economy, you hear things like, oh my gosh, the price of the dollar is gone crazy, it's done this, it's done that, which is true. But for people who, for example, are being paid in hard currency, they're excited. For them, that gives them a lot more spending power. When people are talking about things that are happening, be it in the system, be it in any segment of society that impacts you, you have to make sure that decisions that you're making are true. Number two, they're from reliable sources, they're fact based, you've done your own research before you start, reacting or making decisions. So, number four, it is very, very important for you to make decisions or gather information based on facts and do that with wisdom. I'll take one more point and then I'll pause and ask some and give you an opportunity to ask questions before we continue the next phase. Number five, you need to focus on what you can control. If you can control it, it requires your attention. If you can't control it, if it's outside the scope or the spectrum of your control, then what is the point in grappling with it if you can't even change it? So you may not be able to change inflation rates. You may not be able to change the cost of the dollar to the naira or to the franc or to the shilling or to the pound or whatever it is that your currency is. You may not be able to change any of that. You may not be able to change the infrastructure of the nation. You may not be able to change the fact that the grid goes down every week. You may not be able to change the fact that the economy is working or not working, but you can control your own response to those challenges. Why? Because everything begins with me. your attitude towards the issues will determine the outcomes that you will experience. It is very important that you identify actions within your own reach, things that you need to do now, tomorrow, next, what things have to wait. That way, it becomes easy for you to be able to be, it's easy for you to now be able to just focus on the things that are within your sphere of influence. You can change this, you can't change that. Okay? So that way, it's paramount for you to understand, and that helps you to direct your energy towards areas that you can influence and bring a sense of empowerment and helping you guide your decision making process. So if you have to make decisions, the first few steps you have to take, like I said, is number one, you got to stay calm, you got to stay grounded. Secondly, you have to assess, I didn't say the situation, assess your current situation clearly. Have a clear understanding of what's going on. Identify, number three, what your priorities are and break them down as goals that you can take in tangible, small forms. Gather information wisely. Go to sources of truth, sources of fact, areas where you can get meat, the matter, the things that will impact the outcomes that you're looking for. And then lastly, as number five, is that you need to focus on the things that you have control over. I'll pause here right now for just a few moments. Just to ask if you have any questions so far, we can talk about those before I talk about the next five. Kemi, back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. I don't know if anyone has a question at the moment, but I don't know, because of time, Prof, if I may. Okay, King AJ is already raising his hand. Okay, please unmute and ask your question, please.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Yeah, good.
I'm AJ, joining from Port Harcourt. So, I think one of the last statements the prof made was assess your current situation, like while we're recapping. So he said something. He said not the situation, but the current situation. So I don't know if you could use an illustration to help me understand what's the difference between the situation and the current situation.
Okay. Well, excellent question. Excellent question. The situation, if I say something like inflation, or if I talk about the inability for me to maximize the use of the little money that I have, the factors that impact inflation in a place like Nigeria or the United States are completely different. You understand my point? You cannot go by metrics that are outside of your current locale or your current situation. Or you cannot take the basis of that same problem that you had challenged with maybe a year ago or 6 months ago or even 3 months ago, because so much has changed in that time period. Your situation has changed. The factors influencing the outcome that you're looking for has changed. The situation that you're dealing with in itself has changed. Maybe your finances are better than where they were, or maybe there's a health issue or a family problem or a child or something going on in your life. So you cannot just take an umbrella approach. You've got to take it not only by virtue of what you're dealing with outside, but you also have to reflect on the things that you also have to contend with on the inside. So how a person who is married, for example, will deal with a situation is different from how a person who is married with kids would deal with that same situation, or how a person who is single does not have any of those responsibilities will also deal with that situation. So it all depends. I'm not sure if that makes any sense to you at all.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, thank you. That cleared it for me.
Okay. Any other questions before we continue?
Okay, if there's no other question, I think we can continue. Yes, sir.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes.
All right. So can anybody recap? So since you don't have any questions for me, I have questions for you. Who can recap except for Kemi and except for Victor? Let me just even go that far. Can somebody else or anybody else recap what it is that we've discussed so far? At least the first 5 points. I'll wait patiently. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ogiga. Okay, so I've been in and out. My network has been a bit troublesome, but I think I've been able to pick the 5 points you've talked about so far. So the first one,
looks like we still have some serious network issues going on over there.
Yeah, I think he does. Oh, that's a pity. Okay, King AJ, I saw your hand up. Can you continue? King AJ, you wanted to say something? I think Ogiga's network is not.
Difficult times is to stay grounded and breathing. You recommended that. Wow, sorry about that, but is it better?
Okay, yes, it's better now. We can hear you well. Sorry, King AJ, just hold. Let Ogiga round up.
Okay. So I don't know if you got the first point I mentioned. You said we should stay grounded and calm, and how you can do that is by breathing, doing some meditation, or just basically do some introspection. And the second point is that you assess the current situation clearly, evaluate it. What are the most immediate challenges that you're facing, and then what are the parameters that you can you see that are affecting your current situation. So basically, take a few moments and assess the situation clearly. Then the third point you mentioned is that you identify your priorities and then break down goals. I was listening to that particular point when I got knocked up by the internet, but I think that's it. You identify your priorities and then break down goals. The fourth point
Oh wow, 80.
Okay.
Giga, unfortunately, Giga cannot hear you.
We'll have to move on.
Widely gathered information.
Okay.
And then decisions are made. So how?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so probably I'll just do a recap. Maybe I will send it, but if you can't hear me, I'll just probably type it. I don't know if that works on the chat.
It's better now, though. But you can still type it so that we can as well save the time. But it's better now, actually.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So for the benefit of time, I think he covered the key things. He has an idea, and that was even though despite the challenges with connectivity and everything, he covered the first 4 points, and I think he made an inference to the 5th point. So I think we're good and can continue. We can continue from that point. All right. So point number 6 that I would like to talk about here, as part of making critical decisions or decision making in hard times, is you have to weigh the risks and benefits thoughtfully. Weigh the risks and benefits thoughtfully. You have to list out the potential risks and benefits of each option, because when it comes to decisions, we have to make a decision on something, either to go this way or to go that way, to invest this or to invest that, to pull this, to liquidate that. There is always going to be a cost-benefit analysis that has to happen. There's always going to be an opportunity cost associated with every decision that you make. So the question is, are you willing to accept the outcome of that decision and whatever the cost implications will be? Ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen in this situation? What's the best possible outcome that I can get in this situation? Consider both the immediate and long-term consequences of each choice to make informed and balanced decisions. You just don't jump on the first decision that is being made and run with it. Sometimes you just got to pause. You got to stop. You got to think before you make an informed decision that actually gives you the outcomes that you're looking for. Because at the end of the day, if there's going to be an impact to you, it has to be an impact that you're willing to accept. It has to be something that you're going to be okay with. If you're not going to be okay with it, then perhaps you need to think through that process and see what other options can you bring to bear. Number 7, adapt and stay flexible. I can't emphasize this enough. Why? Because adaptability is vital in uncertain times. Be willing to shift your plans as new information or as new challenges arise. Flexibility will allow you to pivot rather than feel stuck and ensure that you're responding effectively as the situation continues to change. Be fluid. Don't just assume that, this is what I know. This is how we used to do it before. This is how we're going to do it going forward. No, there's always going to be room for change, flexibility, adaptability. You've just got to understand that it doesn't matter if the situation is good, it's bad, it's ugly. What will give you the opportunity to get the best outcome in every situation is the degree of flexibility that you're willing to bring in so that you can pivot. If you think about it this way, you're driving down the road, you're going for an event. And if you are like me, who tends to use software to help you navigate your way from point A to B, Google now, or your Google Maps now says there's traffic ahead, at the next light, take a left. That will save you 3 minutes. But then you now look and say, I've always driven from point A to point B using this road. So this is the plan. That's the way it is going to be. And so guess what? You get stuck in traffic and you find out that part of the reason why they were offering you that option was because the trip was going to increase by 15 minutes if you get stuck in that traffic. The unwillingness to pivot or being adaptable or flexible enough to try something new, even though it was not part of the original plan, could have saved you time. But in this situation, it has put you in a rut. So adaptability is very key, especially in situations where things are constantly changing. The next point we want to talk about is, how do I put this? You have to know how to leverage your network. And when we're talking about networks, oftentimes we're always thinking about the people within your circle of influence, but it is more than that. You have to seek guidance from people who are mentors, from your colleagues, and from people who have experienced similar situations. Sometimes just talking through a problem with someone you trust can reveal new perspectives and potential solutions. Collective wisdom will often lead to stronger decision making. Why? Because if you've never been there and somebody else has, they can tell you things to look out for. They can tell you where the pitfalls are. They can tell you the pain implication associated with that decision you're about to make. They can tell you the areas where you can find treasure and opportunities. So being around people who have either experienced that in one form or the other might be able to help you navigate that particular decision that you're trying to make. Surrounding yourself with people who have either gone through it or are going through it will help you be able to just understand that, this is all part of the process. Okay, so don't be shy, don't be afraid, don't feel it's taking away anything from you to reach out to somebody and say, hey, I have no clue what I'm doing here. I just need some help. Or you've been through this. It's kind of funny. This is a little personal, but I feel like we share it. I was talking with a friend of mine is going through a little bit of a difficult time, having lost, some money. And in the course of our conversation earlier on today, around how we can solve for that problem, and it was interesting that this friend now asked the question that, have you been through this? Have you been through something like this before? And then I laughed. I said, yes. And the question was, how much did you lose? The truth of the matter is that the amount that I lost was at least 13 times more than what this person lost. And this was one transaction. There was Another transaction, in which I lost about $240,000 above what the person lost in this situation. And I noticed that when I was sharing my stories and how I worked through it, I noticed that the fear and the panic that this individual was dealing with and trying to solve for this issue just literally just evaporated and just calmed down to start saying, oh, so it's not really as bad as I thought, or at least my case is not the worst. That means if this person can solve for this problem, which was even bigger, more complex, perhaps a lot more complicated than mine, then it is possible for me to solve mine as well. So always make decisions after you have taken counsel from people who have gone through similar things. Number 9, evaluate your decisions periodically. Evaluate your decisions periodically. What does that mean? You reevaluate the choices that you're making to see if they're yielding the desired outcomes. If they're not, you adjust your actions and goals as needed. And don't be afraid to change course if something is not working. You're not there to impress anybody. There's a saying that he who wears the shoes or she who wears the shoes knows exactly where it pinches. You're not trying to impress anybody. You are the one who's going through that situation. You know the pain points, you know the frustrations, you know everything that you've been dealing with. And so it becomes easier for you to do, to appropriate. So reflecting on your progress ensures that you're on the right track. Because sometimes you may be moving towards something that makes sense, or you may not be moving fast enough. But that constant evaluation allows you to pivot as necessary, allows you to strengthen as necessary, allows you to even just completely abandon the plan and say, this plan ain't working. We need to try something else. So be willing to make changes by constantly evaluating your decisions periodically. Now, whatever that period is completely up to you, depending on what you're trying to achieve. You can make those decisions daily, every week, monthly, depending on how complex that situation is and at what point, what break points or what checkpoints make sense for you to truly evaluate and be able to move forward from there. The 10th point, which I also want to talk about today, is all about your attitude. It means you have to stay optimistic and maintain resilience. Stay optimistic and maintain your resiliency. Why? Because difficult times, no matter how ugly they are, no matter how difficult they are, here's the one thing you can always take home with you. It is temporary. With resilience, you can persevere. You've got to stay on it. You can't give up. Giving up is not an option. How many of you today will get up and say, this country is so hard, so I am giving up on life? You can't do that. You just know that it is for a season. If I can just hold on, things are going to get better. Foster a positive mindset by focusing on your strengths, the things you've achieved in the past before, your potential, the things that you can do. And, sometimes it's even important to just reminisce on some of your past successes. How did you handle difficult times in the past? How were you able to overcome them? What about those victory laps that you had? Those things will fuel and give you the energy that you need to keep going through and push forward. Believe in your capacity to overcome challenges. With this in itself alone will empower you to face any uncertainty with a higher degree of confidence. So rather than just reaching that point where like, oh my gosh, I give up, no, you cannot. You've got to stay optimistic and you've just got to maintain your resiliency at all times. So key things in making decisions is number 1, you have to stay grounded, you've got to stay calm, you've got to breathe, stay centered. Number 2, you have to assess your current situation clearly by fully stepping back and stepping out of whatever situation is going on to understand what it is. Thirdly, identify what are your priorities and how are you going to break them down to tangible little things that you can take one step at a time to accomplish Number 4, gather information wisely. Make decisions based on facts, not assumptions, not your feelings, not the rumors, not any of those things. Facts. 1 is 1, 2 is 2. 4 plus 4 will always be 8. What are the facts around your own situation? And you've got to approach it differently. Number 5, you have to focus on what you can control. Things that are outside of your control, spending time, energy, effort, pain, frustration on things you have no control over. It's like you trying to boil the ocean. The waves are going to come in whether you like it or not. As the waves are coming in, that is going to keep flooding wherever it is. But are there things you can control? The size of your boat, where you stand, what you do? Yes, then do focus on those things very, very centeredly. The next thing you have to do is weigh risks, benefits thoughtfully. What are the outcomes that I'm looking for? What's the best situation? What's the worst that can happen here? Number 7, be adaptable, be flexible, be open to change, be ready to pivot as necessary. If it's not working, only a fool will continue down the same path. Einstein said something, and I'm sure you all know the quote, that it's foolishness for you to continue down doing the same thing and expect a different result. Number 8, leverage your network. People who've been through similar things, mentors, colleagues, family members, friends, whoever it is that you know may be going through what you've gone through and have received outcomes that you desire, or they may have an idea to help you solve the problem rather than you just being so myopic and caught up in your own little box and not able to move forward from point A to B. Number 9, you've got to evaluate your decisions periodically, meaning, is this working? Am I on track? Can I do something differently? What needs to change? What needs to be fortified? What needs to be dumped completely? And then number 10, stay optimistic. Maintain your resiliency because your attitude is everything. Now, if you pay attention to these 10 steps that I've given you, you will realize that it makes it so much easier for you to start not only progressing during times that are difficult, but rather you get to that point where you actually begin to thrive even in difficult times. Okay, so that is my spiel for today, and I will leave the lines open so that you can have questions if you want to ask more pointed questions, situational questions, things that are more personal to you. If you want to do that, we can do that for the next I believe I have about 6 minutes left before I have to start thinking about how to catch my flight. All right, so Kemi.
Yes, Prof. Thank you. Thank you so very much. I was trying to capture the 10 points and post in the chat, but unfortunately, it's not. I don't know. It's not coming, and I think my. Okay, so questions. If we have any, so we can make good use of the time. Do we have any question now? No one yet? Okay, I think okay, you're saying something. Who's there? Okay, I have a question, Prof. Before maybe someone else we come in. Okay, when you were talking about weighing the risk and benefits. Now, sometimes, like the example you gave earlier, when you are trying to do something, especially when you are trying to break into new grounds, and probably everything you have been familiar with have always been like risky, because of the situation you found yourself. Okay, in that kind of situation, how do you go about it? How do you weigh the risk? For example, I'm pivoting into something that is new, is a new space, and it looks as if there might be 1 or 2 persons you can talk to, but nobody physically, maybe a book. How do I now weigh such risk, seeing that everything in my phone is telling me, no, this is dangerous, but in your heart of heart, you just know you want to do this. How do you go about that, Prof, please?
Excellent question. Let me begin my response with the statement that says, there is nothing new under the sun. There is nothing that you have been through as an individual, you are going through as a person, or will ever go through as a person that somebody has not been through in one form or the other. So, except if this is something that is out of this world, I don't know what that might be. But it's either you have access to people around you, or there may be books, materials, information out there that have direct implication, direct value to what you're trying to accomplish. Here's the one thing I've come to learn, that the laws of attraction, the laws of life, these things already exist. It's a question of how you plug into them. And sometimes when you find yourself having reached your wit's end, meaning that you've explored every possibility, as long as you're open-minded, it's kind of interesting that somehow a person or a process or a product or something that will give you the insights that you're looking for will somehow find its way to your path. I don't know how that works, but that has been my experience. Because as long as I am open-minded, I am truly humble enough to say, I don't know this thing, I want to learn, and I'm truly seeking, it's like a puzzle. The pieces begin to fall together, or you come across somebody who just said something in a random comment that points you in the right direction. But as long as you don't give up, you've explored every angle that is possible for that situation based on your capabilities and what you can find out there. Most times you have everything that you need. But to reach that point where it seems you don't have any answers, because can Benedict please mute your line, please? There's an echo feedback coming from your end. But for you to reach to that point where it seems as if there are no ways out, or that you don't have any answers, then guess what? It means that you are a trailblazer, you are the pioneer. So go ahead and create some solutions. Maybe you just need to spend a little bit more time to dig into areas, or maybe you've just got to break that problem further down from one holistic, gigantic problem that you're trying to deal with, to a point where it's solvable enough that you can take a piece of it and work with A, a piece of it and work with B, a piece of it, to be like, oh, see, I've got that down. I don't know how that works. And then you find out that your problem is not solving A to Z. Your problem is just figuring out A, B, C, and X. And that might be areas that you have people who have expertise, which is why I said it is very, very important for you to be very intentional about breaking down whatever thing you're trying to do to actionable steps, to solvable steps where you can be able to absorb and deal with it one step at a time. Does that answer your question, Kevin?
Yes, perfectly well. Thank you, sir. A follow-up question to that. Okay, in doing that, the number 9 point said we should evaluate our decisions periodically. And something came to mind that, okay, sometimes you have to try severally, try things, you try and try and try until you achieve a particular purpose. So in the situation where I'm trying to achieve a goal, but I've tried like 9 times, and all the 9 times that I've been re-evaluating, it has always been telling me, look, this thing is failing, but probably eventually, maybe like, is it Albert Einstein now? The 1,000 times, that is when you get your result. When do you know that time so that you strike a balance? So I will not just evaluate a decision and feel, no, this thing is not working, and I just terminate it. How do you strike a balance?
The question is, what do you know? What are you expecting from that outcome? So let me give you a simple example. Let's take 2 examples. If it is a problem that has what I might consider to be a mathematical solution, that means everybody knows that 1 + 1 + 1 is equal to 3. And you've calculated your 1 + 1 + 1, and it's coming out as 6. You keep down that path. You keep working on it. hoping that at least things will change over time. Because in some cases, you are doing the right thing, but the outcome that you're looking for at the end of the day will be determined by two things. Like, okay, the input is correct, but the output is wrong, which means the problem that is preventing you from achieving your goal is not in the input, but from the output. Something is not right on the other side. That gives you clarity to be able to say, okay, let me address this issue so that I can be able to do that. But you don't get up and say, okay, 1 + 1 + 1 comes up as 4. You put it again, 1 + 1 + 1 comes up at 6. You're doing the same thing, but the outcome is just all over the place. Should I now decide to say, oh, I'm going to change my math? Because you now go 2 + 2 + 2, it's just going to come up as 13. Because the root cause of the outcome that you're getting is not in the input, but in the output. Okay? But if you're doing the right thing, or let's say you're putting in the wrong information, you're expecting something to come up as 6. You put in 1 + 1 + 1, it says 3. You now go back and you change 2 + 2 + 2 comes up at 6. You're like, okay, that's what I was looking for. The question is, where is the disconnect? Why am I not reaching what I am looking for? Is it from my end? Do I have to change my approach? Or is it that I am doing the right thing, but from the other side, it is something outside of my control? Which is why one of the measures we talked about here is it's very important for you to mind the things that you have the power to control. You can control the input, but you can't control the output. Do you understand? So it is very critical at every point in time for you to do that constant reevaluation. You know, back in the day, I started out as a software engineer about 20, 30 years ago. And one of the things that we always did was every time we write code, we have something called breakpoints. What are the purposes of breakpoints? When you write a code, let's say that piece of code is 5,000 lines long. And you run it from the beginning, and the process runs through and then it fails. How do you know where it fails? Because it just gives you a verbiage that says, you know, code could not compile, or it gives you a number that doesn't look like what you're looking for. How do you know where the issue is? So breakpoints allow us to do that. So if I have 5,000 lines of code, after every procedure, maybe I'm trying to create the output. I'm trying to get a date I'm trying to get a date out, a date input. I'm trying to get all those pieces. For every process that runs, I put a breakpoint that tells me breakpoint blah, blah, blah. You know, date is XYZ. The amount is ABC. Those kind of things allow me to keep track. And then all of a sudden, I'm seeing where it says date of birth or it says age of patient. For example, let's say it's a medical platform. It says age of patient is coming out as 177. I'm like, that doesn't look right. You understand? The date of birth is correct, but the age is coming out as 177 years old. So what's the problem? So the date of birth is not the issue. The input is going in, but something in that machine or that mechanism that is calculating the age is where it's breaking from. So having those breakpoints, which I consider to be more like decision points, are important in helping you to know where the problem is. So if it's not working, it simply means it is not working. Then the question is, what is it that is causing it not to work? Okay. But I also know that we have an intuition within us, an intuitive piece of us, part of us, that even though it's not working, there's something in you that says, this is the path, walk ye in it. And you continue to drive on it. Because now you have to remember something, Kemi. You made a point of inference that I want to clarify. Doing something for 999 times, expecting it to work on the 1000th time is silliness. You see, the thing, Kemi, and you use that measure, and I want to clarify it, is For the 999 times or for the 1,000 time that they did the same thing, the input was not the same. They keep changing pieces of it. So I put it this way, it didn't work. So I put a little bit of Schweppes tonic water in it. It looks good. Then I pour a little bit of, another ingredient in it, and it explodes. I'm like, oh, okay. Let me try it again. Instead of using tonic water, let me use a different type of water. Or that is not working. Let me try sparkling or still water. Or maybe the water is not even the issue. Maybe there's some other ingredients that has explosive components that I have to pay attention to. What needs to change in the fundamentals that you're inputting? That is the key thing. So you can't just get to that point where you just say, oh, I'm just going to keep trying and trying and hope something will change. It doesn't work that way. You have to be very intentional. At every iteration, something has to change. If you sit down with any of these scientists, they'll tell you that I've been working on this thing for the last 10 years. But for 10 years, they were not doing exactly the same thing. They tried something, the output was not what they expected, they tried something else. They'll give it a shot this way and find out that it's not working. They change it, they pivot and try something else. So it's a question of you being able to keep working, keep inputting, keep driving, keep striving until you get to a point where actually what it is that you're trying to accomplish has come to fruition. If that's not the case, then you keep working on it. Never get to that point where you think you're just going to give up or you just keep doing the same thing. That is where Einstein was talking about, saying that, for you to continue doing the same thing over and expect a different result, he said that that's insanity. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Absolutely. It does make sense. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good.
I think I got one, just a recap. I got one thing that I shouldn't try to figure out the A to Z. It might be I have to figure it out in bits and pieces. And I think that to me is really powerful. Thank you. Let me just give others the opportunity. This is actually a thing for me, decision making. I think that's why it's kind of personal, but maybe we'll continue offline so that others can also share their views. Any other question? If we have any, please. I think we are really running out of time, but I'm sure Prof can still give us like 5 or 10 minutes.
I will give you as much time as I can give you, but once my flight starts boarding, it's time to go.
We run away. Okay, well, I guess there are no questions again. Maybe.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yes, can we go ahead?
I don't think I've not seen any question. I've just seen some feedbacks that, okay, Adiza, you can only do that when you keep record of, keeping record of your inputs, outputs, and outputs. Oh, okay. Someone has a question? Is that Sarah? Sarah, are you talking to us?
Somebody is talking. Can that person mute, please? Okay. All right. So I have a question for you since you all don't have any questions. So Kemi, are we still online? So I have a question.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
When you're faced with a difficult decision, be it good, no matter how complex the situation is, what is the first thing you need to do?
Stay calm.
This my few way people.
Sorry, doctor.
He has answered it already.
That's
to stay calm. Yes.
That is it. That's the first thing. Stay calm. Calm down. Breathe. Just calm down. That is not the time to start picking up your phone and calling everybody and, hey, oh my God. Because here's what happens. You have to understand the way the human mind is designed. We have neural paths. I'm not sure if you understand what that means. If somebody opens up the brain and show you how it's designed, you will find that it has a very intricate network. And the purpose of that network is the interconnection of information, how to do things. There are certain people who have taken the time to develop their competencies around little things like how to speak a language. They've become so good at learning languages. That's why oftentimes you find this one person can speak English, French, German, Swahili, and a whole bunch of other languages. Why? Because they've developed the neural paths that allow them to be able to learn new languages. Whereas there is this other man or this other woman that lives in your neighborhood has been there for the last 30 years and has not been able to understand the local language. Why? Because they've not taken the time to develop their neural sensitivity around that particular issue. There are people who enjoy things like engineering and science and math and calculation. And there are people who are more empirical in their approach to information. They like the history, they like the story around it. There are people who are more artistic, more social science inclined. And so when you tell a person, hey, you bring a math problem, the fact that it's a math problem alone, their mind has already told them we're terrible at math, so we're not even going to try. Those neural paths don't exist. The way the mind works, the brain is a muscle that you've got to keep exercising. And the more you engage it in specific things, that's why when you're trying to do certain things for the first time, it's very difficult. You find yourself struggling, you're pushing, it's pushing back. You understand my point? But once you start getting used to challenges and dealing with them on a regular basis, you find out that the way your brain functions has also changed. So that is why it's always critical that no matter what the problem is, big, small, extraneous, whatever the issue is, the first thing you need to do is take a step back, sit down, breathe, calm down. You need to get yourself some tonic water, get some tonic water. If there are other things like we can normally use this to chill, go and do what works for you. Everybody's different. But calm down. Because in your ability to just relax, extract yourself from the core of that situation, you actually begin to see prospects on how to solve that problem. Okay? So that is very key. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so let me quickly ask. I hope you can hear me. Okay, so
Yes,
I don't
yes,
know.
we can hear you.
Okay, so how do we draw some kind of balance from having to procrastinate when you need to make a decision, for instance, very quickly? You know, there's always that, will I say, struggle for me, because I think I consider myself a deep thinker. And then I would like to really assess things very well before going through it. But then if you're not careful, you can also be tilting towards procrastinating, and then you leave things that you're supposed to do at a certain times a bit longer. But then that's when you also feel confident that you've done your due diligence before following through a particular, idea or anything. So how do we draw the balance between, doing your due diligence in terms of probably following all these points you've raised, and then maybe not leaving things too long? Or what if, for instance, maybe a situation needs you to make the decision at that moment? How do you bring all of what we've heard today to bear?
Well, excellent question. Excellent question. But here's the thing I want to ask you. What should determine the speed of decision is what are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to save money? Are you trying to save money? Are you trying to save a lot? What are you trying to achieve? That oftentimes is what determines the speed of decision. But there's one thing that you have said during the course of this call or during the course of your question is you use a word that starts with P. That P word there, that P word is very expensive. It does not matter what kind of decision you have to make. If procrastination is involved in the process, you will lose. You will lose something. You will lose money. You will lose time. You will lose face. You will lose something. Procrastination never benefits anybody in any form or the other. So let me give a classic example. I travel a lot. And one thing I have come to learn is buying my ticket earlier always saves money. Always. Why do I say that? If I don't buy the ticket now, because the ticket was, let's say I want to buy this ticket and the ticket is $5,000. And I'm like, $1,000 for this trip. Let me just wait a little for the price to come down. I will tell you this, that probably 9 out of 10 times the price doesn't come down. It only gets higher. But here's the beauty of it. You have to, like I said, we have to understand the inner working of things. How do they work? So here's what I do. I want to travel in a month. The ticket is $5,000. I'll go ahead and buy the ticket. But I will not buy a non-refundable ticket. I'll buy a ticket that allows me to make changes so that a week to the day of the trip, I will check. By chance, the ticket might be down to $4,000 or it might be down to $4,500. Is the extra $500 worth the hassle of canceling the ticket and rebooking it? Probably yes or no. Everybody's in a different situation. Or it could just be that the ticket at that point, I'll check it, it's now 8,000. I'm like, Father, thank you. Imagine if I was sitting down all the while saying, no, I'm waiting for this. And it has happened to me so many times. I've been burned so many times. So because of that, the concept of procrastination does not apply in certain things for me. As a matter of fact, if you procrastinate on anything, I can almost with certainty guarantee you that there's always something you're going to lose. And depending on the kind of work you do, for example, by virtue of what I do for a living or what I do for work, there is no room to procrastinate because part of it is that people are looking up to me to make decisions every day, several times an hour. So they'll run things by you and say, hey, Dala, what do you think about this, that? I have one concept and I have one philosophy. I'll look at it at a high level and I would make a decision. Why? Because I would rather fail fast, pick myself up and move, than drag my feet, hoping that I will see the whole picture. You can never see the whole picture in every situation. It's almost impossible. So in some other cases, you can always, what's the word I'm looking for? You can always delegate that responsibility depending on the magnitude of what that decision is or what impact that situation has. So, or in some cases, based on what you're trying to accomplish, you can say, you know what, let's take a break now and we can come back and reconvene maybe tomorrow, maybe when we've had some time to chew over this issue and all come up with a plan. Or I need more information on A, B, C, and D. And then that in itself would drive whatever decision you have to make. But for you to get to that point where you think procrastination is a buffer to help you gain something, I don't know anybody that has gained anything through procrastination. I hope that answers your question. Answers the question that you're asking.
Yeah, it does. Thank you so much,
Okay.
sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, Kemi.
Yes, Prof.
Did you abandon us to go and be watching TV?
No, I'm here live and direct. This is my constituency. Oh wow, we really had a good time. I wish the session would not finish. I have plenty questions on decision making, plenty, but maybe time would not permit me to talk about that. I can send a private message later.
Here's what I am going to do to challenge this group. You all have different experiences, different educational background, different value and that you bring to the table. Maybe what you could do is spend some time. Kemi, you made a mention and said, "Oh, you wish this call would not end." Some of these things that we're talking about, you can discuss amongst yourselves. Share your thoughts. You have some very brilliant people on this call. Some very, very successful business people on this call that I know of, that I have either mentored in one form or the other or have interacted with in one form or the other over the last few years.
Yeah.
So maybe as an exercise, rather than this call is over now, oh, Prof wants to go and catch a flight, so now we will solve our problems the next week. No. Talk amongst yourselves. This is when we talk about saying leverage your network. This is part of what I'm talking about.
Yeah, sure.
If you are comfortable enough to understand that, because if you're on this call, it means that you know somebody who knows me. That means that person is somebody you can trust. Maybe it's an opportunity now for you to, my flight is boarding. It's an opportunity for you to now sit down and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think? Or maybe I'm dealing with this situation, and you can be able to just use it and share on the platform. It may not be in the exact details, but you can share pieces of it and say, hey, has anybody ever dealt with a situation like this? Does anybody have something you can contribute? And you'll be amazed to find out the depth of information that you can have from platforms like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, sir. It does make sense.
All right, well, at this point, Kemi, I'm going to hand off the call to you. I need to go, but it was nice meeting all of you, and I look forward to our next session a month from now, the last Saturday of the month.